Hello and welcome to Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue, and we're just here to give you a little bit of insight of what's going on currently at our Wildlife Rescue Center. I'm Dan, Dr. Dan Famini, the veterinarian here at Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue.
And my name's Taylor. I'm one of the animal care assistants here at Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue.
And so what's going to happen with this little video is I will show some slides, different things that have been going on around here at the Wildlife Center currently. And Taylor, since you're here on a day-to-day basis, you're here routinely, I just jump in as the medical needs arise, you'll let me know what we're seeing and what's going on.
Can do.
My first question to you is, based on last year's number, what do you think are the biggest, most prevalent species we have coming in here?
Based on last year's number? Well,
Yep.
I would say the Virginia opossums are going to be the number one just because their litters are so big. But past that, then squirrels are going to be number one. But the top six are opossums, squirrels, foxes, coyotes, raccoons, and I'm missing something else.
So perfect amongst the mammals.
Yeah.
And so what we actually had last year, as you of course know, 1,500 animals coming through, with opossums absolutely number one, 300, about 20% of our intakes. And then if you, the birds are so many different species, we group them for this chart. This is a map of where the animals came from last year throughout Sonoma County. But then, yeah, we got squirrels, skunks, raccoons, and foxes rounding out the rest of the list. And so when it comes to our most common species, here we have something that's being set up every day, multiple times per day in our wildlife hospital area. And so want to tell us what's going on with these littles?
Yeah, absolutely. These look like two enclosures for some of our orphaned babies that have came in. The left side is going to be the opossum and what an opossum diet looks like. And the right side is going to be for squirrels. So you can see that they have a plethora of nuts and seeds offered to them, as well as the fruits and veggies. And yeah, as Dr. Dan said, this is something that we do every day constantly, of changing out old enclosures and refreshing it for them, or setting up new enclosures for new animals.
And so we are a wildlife rescue. We're taking in injured and orphaned animals and then caring for them so they can be returned to the wild. And so there's a whole lot of food here, way more than these little critters can eat. Why do they have so much of a smorgasbord offered?
Absolutely. The little babies, we want them to gain as much as they can. We want them to be big and healthy. Usually when they come in, they're a little bit thin, maybe dehydrated. They've been on their own for a while. And so we want them to have as much as they could possibly want, especially in the crucial hospital stages. And then once they get outside, we'll start hiding it a little bit more so that we have to work for their food and exhibit more natural behaviors. But at this stage, we want them to just eat as much as they can.
And we are in the middle of baby season. So there's a big seasonality to when wildlife are born, and therefore when all the orphans come in. And so today we're going to be talking about mostly a whole bunch of little orphans. And so you took a couple brief videos. And so what's going to be going on here?
So this is an orphaned western gray squirrel being fed by one of our interns. So when their eyes are closed like this, they do need supplemental bottle feeds. And so you can see our intern using that syringe with specific squirrel formula made specifically for them. And you can see him getting his bottle feed.
And so, all right, so squirrels on the spectrum of babies. Are they fussy babies? Are they happy babies?
Well, it depends. This one is being very good. But when they're a lot smaller than this, they are a lot fussier, especially when they first come in. What we're feeding them doesn't taste like mother's milk. The nipple doesn't feel like mom. And so they're usually really fussy, but this animal has been in care for a couple of days, and so has kind of figured out what's going on. I guess on the spectrum, they are a little bit easier compared to some of the other animals that we'll probably be talking about.
Could be. And of course, feeding a baby is like what everyone imagines doing to nurse and animal health. The sound is on in this video, and we hear a big fat nothing because it is critical for these animals' welfare when they get released out to the wild, that they have not just healthy bodies, but healthy behavior. And so you cannot baby talk them. You cannot get them used to your voice. You have to make sure that you are separating as much of the human impact as you can while we have to do this big intervention to get these guys gradually towards release. And so it's pretty hands-on when they're this tiny and young, but then as they develop, we get more and more hands-off so that they can be caring for themselves appropriately. But giving a bottle isn't the only thing that a baby needs. And so with every feeding, we also have photos of this fine activity.
Yes. So the baby animals, they cannot go to the bathroom on their own. Their mother is actually going to sit there and lick and to stimulate them to go to the bathroom. And so here, we don't do that, obviously, but we do use a wet wipe and we stimulate them in that capacity until they're going on their own, and then we can stop that.
And so, so part of every care is going to be making sure they can eliminate. And then we have not just squirrels and opossums, but we have other critters, of course, coming through the center as well. And so this would be?
This is a raccoon. This raccoon is also being bottle fed. The eyes just opened. As we're talking about animals that are fussy, I'd probably say the raccoons are going to be some of the fussiest animals, some of the slowest to take to a bottle. This raccoon has been in care for about a week now, and so it's had a lot of opportunities being fed 4 times a day to figure out what is going on and to help it by suckling instead of trying to just have them swallow in a little bit more difficult fashion. But another one of our interns was feeding this animal, and you can see that it's understanding what's going on. But as Dr. Dan said previously, you also are going to hear a big fat nothing from any of the people in that space.
And so it's getting fed 4 times a day. How long are they on the bottle about?
For specific feeding?
So in terms of how long do they have to, how many weeks do they need to be bottle fed?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. Definitely a couple weeks for sure, maybe like a month. Depending on how young they are when they come in, yeah. Yeah,
but we are going to wean these guys as early as possible to get them onto natural diet as possible and to really remove as much human interaction as possible so they can stay wild. And then, as they are developing, the eyes are just opening here. And so as they're getting more stimuli, we want as much of that to be natural stimuli as possible. So they start off in these very controlled environments because they're so delicate. And so they're going to be in incubators when they're at a certain age and then in a small controlled environment. But then we move them outside as quickly as there is safe to do so. But not every animal comes in as an orphan. We also do have injured animals coming through. And so this is an individual that's been with us for a while now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably like 6 weeks at this point. This great horned owl came in, as you can obviously see, with an eye injury. We're not quite sure what happened, but the eye would inflate and then deflate and leak fluid. But this patient actually also came in emaciated. So not only was it suffering with this eye injury, but maybe because of it or because of whatever else was going on, he was not able to hunt properly and kind of.
Yeah, and so because we're getting animals that are out and injured in the wild, we never get the full story of what's happening. And so it's really common for animals to be compromised from one disease process, and then because they're compromised, they get injured. And so when an animal comes in, even the obvious factor of what's going on is not necessarily the full story. And so whenever we get an animal that's truly emaciated, muscle wasted, meaning it's been without a lot of food for a long time, then it's both at increased risk for being able to regain to health because whatever's going on may still be smoldering, and have higher risk for problems during rehab. And you have to be careful with them as you go from that more delicate state. But luckily, this individual's been doing well. Now, the eye on an owl, and this is a great horned owl, they have big eyes. They are really prone to injury, and having ocular damage is a pretty common condition they come in. There was a tear in the cornea on this animal and internal damage within the eye itself. It was not a visual eye, nor was it ever going to be a visual eye again. And then because of the rigidity of the structures that hold the eye in an owl skull, once there is some damage, sometimes it cannot seal up like with other species. And so the aqueous humor just kept leaking out. And so this was an animal that we had to remove the eye, but that was not the end of the story for this owl. So it got through its emaciation period, got through its rehab period, then we actually tested it to make sure it still can hunt. And so it passed its live prey test evaluation. And are you ready to see this owl fly?
I'm ready.
Okay. So here is our large flight enclosure. And so through the magic of our smartphones, we have Slow-Mo.
Oh, man. That rocks.
All right. And so we have a 100-foot long a 100-foot-long raptor enclosure where we'll put animals in as they're regaining strength so that we can encourage them to, first of all, they can just do natural behaviors to move around a great deal, and they can also, if need be, we can encourage them to do so many reps to build that muscle strength so they're ready to return to the wild. This owl, you can hear it swoops up, touches the ceiling, and then bounces down before it goes over to that other perch on the far side. And so, which is a very healthy capacity for movement. And so we're just waiting for the last of that incision to heal. And so hopefully within a week, this owl will be heading back out to the wild. And so it's not the only owl we had in here.
We have been getting a ton of fell from nest, fledgling, great horned owls. This year we probably had maybe 5 or 6 already. So this is just one. This is going to be one of our nestling kind of branchers. He is not quite staying in his nest all the time and is getting a little bit more feisty when we're trying to give him his mice in the morning. But this is what they look like before they get all that beautiful plumage. They are like little poof balls.
Oh, and this guy's showing off too. So his wings are like up and out so he can be as big as possible, and he's puffing up to try to be as impressive as possible, which is, an owl that's really trying to show off. I might have a couple clacks. Let's see. And so that clack, that's the extent of their intimidation protocol. And so this video is one I took a couple days ago. And so what happened to this little fellow?
This owl was renested by some of our amazing renesting volunteers. So every time we get a bird that fell from the nest, or even some of the mammals, but we will reach out to the finders and to figure out what exactly the nest situation looks like at their property, if it's something that we can access, if it's something that's stable and secure, because as we want to get these animals back out to the wild, we want them to also be cared for by their parents. And so this animal was renested. We brought out another basket. It sounded like the nest wasn't necessarily the best situation. And so we were able to secure the basket to a tree. It was put into the basket, and then later that night and the next morning, the finders actually saw the parent come down and interact with the baby and feed the baby. So it was a total win-win situation.
Yeah, so the goal is to have these animals cared for as best as possible, and whenever there's an option, being cared for by the wild parents is, of course, going to do a better job than any rehabber ever could. And speaking of other raptors, I take it this was part of today's routine?
This was part of today's routine. We have 2 little red-shoulder hawks that came into us on Sunday that fell from a nest in Sunday's serious windstorms. And so because they are not picking up mice on their own, we have to go in with, you can see those forceps and little mice cut up and just hand it to them, and they're being very willing and very compliant in taking the mice from us.
And do you know if we happen to have a renesting option for these guys?
We have reached out to our main renesting person yesterday, and she is actually in the process of talking to all the finders to figure out what exactly is going on in the best situation for these guys.
Yeah, so plan A, keep these guys robust and healthy until they go back to the wild. And so ideally that will be very soon if it's renesting. If not, we'll care for them as long as we need to get them back out there. And then, all right, so this video, this is one I took of another patient that we have in here. Now, you'll notice the enclosure in this is a little bit different. This individual had, when it first came in, was worrisome for possible neurologic signs. And so there are some disease processes, such as distemper, that can be very contagious, or even avian influenza these days. And so if you have something that's a suspect of having a disease that could affect other animals, we can't always use our regular enclosures. We have to use a separate isolation one. So this little guy is set up in a dog kennel. And so the front grate isn't our typical container, but I just wanted to show some behavior, and you can tell me what's going on with this little skunk. And so this little one, now is he still in the bottle, or is he? This
little one was cut off the bottle as of yesterday.
Okay.
So he is eating on his own. We don't fully wean until after they've started to show that they can eat their full diet, eat their protein on their own. And these behaviors that Dr. Dan was mentioning, these are actually very typical of a skunk, even a baby skunk, even one this small, to stomp at you, raise their tail, as are the behaviors that you would see of an adult skunk. So this one is just going straight into his own. He knows exactly what's going on. And so as soon as his extended quarantine is up as per our isolation protocol, he will likely be moving out with some other conspecifics, some other similarly sized skunks outside.
Yeah, because you put multiple individuals together, you take multiple baby raccoons, multiple baby skunks. They really help each other stay wild and have appropriate behaviors, and so that's part of the plan for any animal coming through. And so that's what's going on right here at the center right now, this week, here in middle of May 2025. And so if you are curious about what else happens, please let us know. If you have any questions, if you like this video and want us to keep you guys updated on what's going on, let us know. And we're always happy to help our wildlife community. Of course, that is a team sport. We always need everyone else to let us know what's going on. Mostly animals are brought in by Good Samaritans who find injured animals. And so look forward to hearing and interacting with you guys more.